Okay, welcome back to our video series on healthcare information technology. This video will cover chapter number 3, Desktop IT Operations. The objectives for this chapter: list the different types of computing resources and computer languages, explain how to set up a desktop workstation, list the steps in troubleshooting hardware and software, and describe how to configure devices. First, we'll start with healthcare IT, challenges and opportunities. Now, the healthcare industry has been very slow to embrace the use of information technology, and that would include computers and handheld devices, such as tablets. Now, these are found in healthcare facilities, but they're not that pervasive in local doctors' offices. But there are some federal laws that are accelerating the shift to an electronic health record, and there are some target dates that have been established for the widespread adoption to use this kind of technology. An IT overview. See, one of the types of records you can have for a patient is an EMR, electronic medical record. And this is basically an electronic version of the patient's paper chart. And this will contain the patient's medical and treatment history. Now, of course, there's going to be advantages of having an EMR over having a regular paper record. You can easily track data over time in an electronic file. You can identify patients for preventative care, and you can monitor the performance of a large number of patients in a very short amount of time if you're able to sort through this information electronically. Now, some disadvantages of the paper records would be it's difficult to distribute information, and anything that's handwritten is prone to having transcription errors. And that could be a very serious mistake if you're talking about, say, a prescription order, for example. Now, another type of electronic record is an EHR, electronic health record. Now, this focuses more on the total health of the patient. So this goes beyond collecting just the data at the doctor's office. It's designed to be shared among a patient's healthcare provider, so a general overall view of that patient's health. And some advantages of an EHR: the data that's collected by a primary care provider can inform an emergency room physician. The patient can log into their own record through the internet, and a clinician's notes from a hospital stay can easily be used to create accurate discharge instructions for that patient. I now talk about various types of computing resources. The first one we'll talk about is the mainframe computer. This is a large, powerful, very expensive computer. And it's designed to process a large amount of data very, very quickly, and it can support hundreds of users at the same time. And the typical desktop computer, the dumb computer terminal as it's called, is used to connect to that mainframe. And mainframes are most frequently used in government settings, financial services, retail, and manufacturing industry. A network is anything that resembles net in how it looks or how it functions. So when it comes to a computer network, is where you have multiple interconnected computers or interconnected devices going off of the same server, the same mainframe. Client-server computing is where you have a network controlled by a special high-powered server. And the clients in this situation are the individual computers on the network. Each individual desktop at a facility will be the client, and the servers will service the request of those various desktop computers or those connected devices. In this image, we have an example of a client-server computing setup. We have the main server up here, then you have the network connection device here, and from here, all the various terminals are set up. They're all based off this network connection device. This is how an actual server would look. These individual servers in a rack. So these tend to take up a good amount of room, generate a lot of heat, can compute large amount of data very, very quickly. Now, traditionally, servers that require different software would be separate physical computers. So basically a souped-up desktop computer, which had more functionality, a lot more power to it, so it functioned as a server. But there is a new approach to this setup. It's called virtualization. This is for where you have more than one server can run on a physical piece of equipment. And some advantages of virtualization: this will reduce the cost of purchasing separate computing hardware. So this image, we have an example of virtualization. Before this process, this is how this would be set up. You would have a print server. All they worked on was printing information. The web server, email server. One server dedicated to the functionality of several devices, but just for web connection, just for email, just for print connections. Or after virtualization, you have less of a need for an actual physical device. You can run a print server, web server, and email server all on one. So this reduces hardware you have to keep up with, reduces the cost of that hardware, and reduces the space it would take up. Terminal services. This is a variation of the client-server computing setup. This is where you have software for applications that is installed on servers. And that software is accessed through the client machines, through the desktop devices or desktop computers. But those client machines do not contain any software. The actual processing for the software is carried out on the server. They're just being accessed by the client machines. Now, an advantage of a terminal service like this: older desktop computers can be used simply as terminal. So this reduces the cost of buying high-performance desktop computers for every single station, every single office within a facility. Cloud computing, this is a pay-per-use model, and it's a recent method of accessing computing resources online, and these are all accessed by using the internet. And an example of this would be the storage or computing power is accessed in the cloud. That's what that is a reference to. Hosted services is where you have servers and storage and support that is shared by multiple tenants, such as users or organizations. On this table, we have some characteristics of cloud computing. So for one, you have an on-demand self-service, where the consumer can automatically increase or decrease the resources without requiring any kind of human interaction. There's universal client support, so virtually any network device, a desktop, laptop, smartphone, tablet, can access the cloud and the computing resources there. The invisible resource pooling, the physical and virtual computing resources are pooled together to serve multiple consumers at the same time. So the customer has little or no knowledge of the actual physical location of the servers that they're using. There's immediate elasticity, which means that the resources that are needed can be increased or decreased depending on the demand. Another characteristic is metered services. The fees for this setup can be based on the amount of resources that are used. And when it comes to cloud computing, there are multiple service models. The first one, SaaS, S-A-A-S, the cloud software as a service, where you have a cloud computing vendor provides access to a vendor's software application. You can also have PaaS, P-A-A-S, where you have cloud platform as a service. This is where a customer can install and run their own specialized applications. You can also have cloud infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. This is where the customer can deploy and run their own software, their own operating system, and their own applications. All right, now we'll talk about programming languages. This is the language that's used to communicate instructions to computer hardware. And the instructions for two programs to communicate with each other is called the Application Programming Interface, or API. And when it comes to programming languages, there are some very common languages for web development. The first one, HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, XML, Extensible Markup Language, PHP, ASP, Active Server Pages, Flash, and SQL, Structured Query Language. All right, now we'll talk about setting up a desktop workstation. Now, the desktop computer workstation is a computing workhorse in a healthcare setting. This is where most of the work gets done on a day-to-day basis. And as a healthcare IT professional, you must understand the hardware and software components of this workstation. All right, we'll go over the parts of the desktop system. When it comes to the hardware, you have the processing hardware. The actual heart of the machine would be the CPU, the central processing unit. You have the input hardware, the devices that are used for data entry into the computer, such as the keyboard. You have the output hardware. This often connects through a USB, the Universal Serial Bus connection. This hardware could include speakers, printers, monitors, and so on. Different types of desktop software. You have the OS, or the operating system, that actually makes that desktop run. You have utility software, and you have application software. Now the OS software, this serves as an intermediary between the user and the computer hardware. It will allocate memory for processes, it will assign processes, perform communications, and monitors progress. Utility software, this will provide additional functionality but is not found within the core operating system of the desktop. And this will typically perform a single task, such as file synchronization. And the application software is a general software that's used for a variety of different tasks, such as word processing applications, spreadsheets, database applications. All right, now we'll talk about installing and configuring a workstation. And this, of course, is a primary duty of the healthcare IT professional. And there are a standard set of tasks that are involved with configuring a workstation. And they include selecting the proper location for the workstation, unpacking all of the components, connecting the components to the system unit, creating user accounts, running hardware diagnostic tests, and then installing the updated drivers. All right, this image we have the back of a workstation, and you can see where the various connections are found. Up here you see the connections for the older models of keyboards and older connections of a mouse would be found. The standard purple and greenish color here. And the USB ports here, network connection here, older monitor connection down here. So these are going to be pretty standard for all workstations. On this table we have a list of computer components and their connections. You see the first one here, keyboard. The modern keyboards use a standard USB connection, but older keyboards would have a connection that was purple in color. A mouse, the more modern ones will use a USB connection. Older ones used a greenish color connection. Monitors, older monitors used a connection that was blue in color. Modern monitors will use a white connector. Modern printers will use a USB connection. The network connection, these are typically not colored in any way, but they resemble a phone jack, but a little bit larger. Some additional tasks in setting up the workstation: updating the operating system, turning on the security protections, configuring the power settings, installing the software, and creating a backup image. Alright, now I'll move on to troubleshooting. This is the process of tracing and correcting problems. Now, this skill is an essential skill for healthcare IT technicians. Now, the steps that are involved with troubleshooting include identifying the problem, then assessing the different options for solving that problem. This includes solving hardware and software problems, and this may involve consulting documentation from various vendors of that hardware, of that software. Now, regarding hardware, now today's computer electronics are modular and fairly low cost, and time is rarely spent to attempt to repair faulty hardware. It's usually a lot faster and a lot more inexpensive just to replace a component as opposed to trying to fix that faulty component. Some troubleshooting tips for printers: of course, check the power to the device and any connections, update the drivers, restarting the print spooler, and replacing the ink or the toner. This table we have some troubleshooting issues that come up with computer monitors, such as if the screen is blank, or if the image is flickering, or the screen goes blank if it's not used. And a good indicator would be to look at the various states of the lights, if the power light is off, or if it's on, or if it's blinking. So if the screen is blank and the power light is off, it could be that the power is not turned on. If the screen is blank and the power light is on, are the contrast and the brightness adjusted correctly? Is the video card inserted correctly? If the image is flickering and the power light is on, is the cable to the computer fitting in as tightly as it should? Is there any interference from speakers or lights or fans? If the screen goes blank and not being used, and the power light is off or blinking, is the computer set to go to sleep mode? Does pressing the keyboard turn it back on? On this table we have troubleshooting issues regarding a computer mouse, such as the pointer on the screen doesn't move as the mouse moves. This could be due to a buildup of dirt on the trackball of the mouse. Of course, the solution would be to clean out that dirt so the trackball is able to move more freely. The pointer on the screen moves too slowly or too quickly. The configuration settings for the mouse may be turned off, or they may be too sensitive. The wired mouse doesn't work when the computer is started. The potential cause could be that the cable is disconnected. Wireless mouse doesn't work or works erratically. This could be due to any number of causes. So you may need to move the mouse closer to the transmitter. You may need to change the USB port. You may need to replace the batteries, and so on. When it comes to software, now software troubleshooting includes installing periodic software updates. This could include installing a security patch or an update. A security patch is a general software security update to fix a discovered vulnerability. And a software update is a universal software enhancement for all customers of that software. And a hotfix is a software that addresses specific customer situation. A service pack is a cumulative package of security updates and additional features. So you're not just addressing one issue for one group of consumers. It's a collection of 4 or 5 different issues downloaded at the same time as a pack. That's why it's called a service pack. Patches should be installed in a timely fashion, and modern operating systems have automatic updates. And drivers should also be updated periodically. All right, now we'll talk about configuring devices. Some examples of types of devices would be mobile storage devices, mobile computing devices, and imaging devices. Physical interfaces. This is the point of interaction between the computer and another device. An example of that would be a port, which is a connection on a computer for attaching an external device, such as a serial port or a parallel port or a USB, universal serial bus. And the USB interface will have multiple versions, either 1.0, 2.0, or 3.0. You also have IEEE 1394. This type of connection will transfer bits one at a time at very high speed. And this is used for high-speed communications between personal computers and digital audio or video or automotive applications, such as a hard drive or a digital camcorder, for example. Also have a Bluetooth physical interface. This is a wireless technology using short-range radio frequency transmissions. It's designed for short distances, up to 33 feet or about 10 meters, and it provides for ad hoc device pairings. On this table we have examples of Bluetooth products. For example, in a car, it's used for a hands-free car system or a cell phone. For home entertainment, you can pair it with stereo headphones and a portable music player. Photographs, the pairing could be a digital camera, the printer. When it comes to gaming, the pairing could be a video game system with a controller or a headset. Sports and fitness, the pairing could be a heart rate monitor with a wristwatch, so athletes can track their heart rates while they're exercising just by glancing at their watch. All right, now we'll talk about mobile storage devices. These are external devices that provide additional storage capabilities. They're commonly used to back up or transfer data. And some types of Mobile storage devices include magnetic storage, optical storage, or solid-state storage. Regarding magnetic storage, this is the oldest type of storage technology. And some examples of this could be either an external or internal hard disk drive. You can also use a magnetic tape as a storage device. Optical storage, this is where data is recorded on a disk by burning marks into the surface, and then is read back by a very focused beam of light. So examples of this kind of storage would be CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays. On this image we have examples of external storage devices. Over here you're transferring data from this laptop to this cell phone. So that phone will be considered an external device. Here we have an external hard drive. A solid-state storage. This is flash memory used to store data. An example of this would be a USB flash drive. Now some advantages to this kind of storage device. There's no fragile moving parts, fairly inexpensive, and they're small with a relatively large storage capacity. An example of this would be an SD card, a secure digital card, and this uses flash memory. And here we have examples of a USB flash drive and an SD card. A flash drive, or a thumb drive as some people call it, an SD card. Both of these are examples of a solid-state storage device. Now we'll talk about mobile devices. Now mobility is the defining characteristic of modern computing. And this covers a large variety of different devices, such as tablet PCs. These are lightweight touchscreen computing devices. And some use a very specialized mobile operating system. And these generally do not have a separate keyboard that you would find with a laptop or a desktop. Another example of a mobile device would be a smartphone. This provides web access and much, much more, such as countless applications that provide additional functionality. Alright, imaging devices. These are used to capture information and convert it to electronic format. And some examples of an imaging device would be a document scanner, a fax printer, a card or a badge scanner, or a barcode scanner, a signature pad, and a digital camera. Alright, now we'll talk about installation and configuration. Alright, first, you need to identify the proper interface port, and the BIOS is responsible for enabling and disabling these ports. You install the correct drivers. These may come with a CD with that hardware device. You connect the device to the proper interface port. Sometimes these drivers are installed automatically at this point. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are. And then you configure that device for use, which would include running the software that accompanies that device. Okay, that brings us to the end of this chapter. A quick summary of what we've covered. Electronic medical record. This is an electronic version of the paper charts found in a clinician's office. Electronic health records are designed to be shared between providers. Mainframe computers are designed to process large amounts of data quickly. In client-server computing, the server provides resources to the individual client computers. Virtualization allows multiple servers to run on a single physical computer. Cloud computing is a pay-per-use model for access to computing resources online. Desktop computers include hardware and software, and types of software include the operating system, utility software, and application software. Troubleshooting is a process of tracing and correcting problems, and imaging devices are used to capture information and convert that information to an electronic format. Alright, that brings us to the end of this video on chapter number 3. We will continue our video series on healthcare information technology with our next video on chapter number 4, network IT operations.